What's up, guys? It's day 315 on our journey to 2000. One of those. And in today's video, we are going to look at our opponent for next week's round 3 tournament in the Creator Cup. I'm playing in a tournament with other creators, YouTube, Twitch, streamers, whatever. And we are in the group stage. This is round 3, the last round. I am currently tied for first, but I think I need to win both of my games. I don't even know how it works. All I know is I should probably study the person I'm going up against, and that should be fine and fun. And this is the guy, Matt. And he has all of this stuff. I never saw this. And let's see. We're going to look at the games he plays. His blitz rating is actually pretty low compared to his rabbit. His rabbit is 1900, which is kind of scary, but hasn't played rapid in a while. We're going to look to see if he plays fast, if he plays slow, if he like what openings he plays. And hopefully he doesn't watch this video. And we'll see what happens. So what I like to do, I like to open a bunch of the games, recent games. We could go to completed games. This looks more kind of original, the background now. And we could go to this, press rated, go to full screen so it looks nicer, and press search. I think we could also come here and change this to live games, or rapid games rather. So that's probably a thing, but I don't see it now, so we're gonna ignore that. He's playing a lot of bullet and blitz. I don't think he's played rapid in a while, but here we have 2 rapid games from this tournament actually. So that's gonna be helpful to look at. He actually beat and lost to the woman who I beat and lost to, if that makes sense. He has the same record against the person I versed the other day. And you could watch that video if you haven't already. It was fun. I think playing in tournaments is actually super fun. I should do it more. Jesus, he just plays this. Blitz. He has some high percentage in some openings. The other thing I want to do is I want to see his insights. You could look at insights, if they have insights, and look at that. So he has a 1698 FIDE rating, which is pretty crazy to me. Like, when I work at a club, when I talked to the guy I work with, or for, he told me I'm probably around 1500. But I beat a guy who had 2000 FIDE rating in this tournament already. So this shouldn't really intimidate me, and it's kind of crazy. I don't know, maybe I'm a higher rated player than I thought. I have no idea. But this is stuff we're going to look at. 1900s he actually performs pretty well against, which is a little scary. But we're going to see what openings he plays and all that stuff. Then we're going to look at some games. So, in balanced games, he wins a lot. Actually, he wins a lot. I think, wow, his record seems pretty good. I guess when the game is more crazy, he does worse. Balanced, he has very high accuracy. Jesus Christ. Games that ended in the opening. Okay, this info is not as helpful, I think. Okay, and he plays the Scotch. I actually used to play the Scotch. So that's kind of cool. Scotch. Caro Khan is white. Okay. Alpin Sicilian. French defense. Sorry, I'm tired. Okay, a lot of different stuff actually. A little hard to pinpoint what he plays exactly. So we could go to the game archive and see some more info. And as black, he plays the French defense. I actually hate going up against the French. Basically because I'm not good at it. But let's see some games here. So in this game, we have I don't even know what this is called. This is a French? I don't know what this is. Yeah, this is a French? I don't know. And, okay, I mean, all of this looks pretty normal. I want to say, like, what type of player he is. Like, all his moves are green. There's like no mistakes. He just seems to play very solid chess. This is probably not the way I should analyze, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, this is right. This is the Scotch. Here, there's this move, and against this, I used to play like this. You play here. I think pawn comes here to put more support here. Knight develops here, protecting this, giving space to castle. Bishop comes here, eyeing this, and then both sides castle. And this is a drawn position, and it's very kind of a lot of things can happen here. Now, I don't know too much more than that, but this is the Scotch. I used to play it. Here, the opponent plays this pawn move, a little weird, I think. Getting into this position, I mean, white is just up a pawn, and this is a neutral game, apparently. Probably because... what, actually? I don't know. I don't know why it's a neutral game. So let's try to figure... I mean, knight d2 attacks this pawn and attacks the rook. Okay, yeah, this is just a simple fork, right? You try to attack, you have this. Oh, computer says... yeah, computer says that is the move. So our opponent doesn't do that. And resigns. Okay. Not our opponent, his opponent. Yeah, I don't know how useful it is looking at these games, but it is good to see what type of openings he plays. So that's kind of looks crazy to me as black. But he's playing all the best moves. Jesus. This guy is scary. Oh, and then he blundered. What did he blunder here? He blundered a... what? This? So yeah, I'm too dumb to understand what he blundered. We're just gonna assume I understood and we'll just ignore that. I'm really just curious about how he plays the opening for now. That's the big thing I want to focus on. So, I mean, we're gonna look through some of the game, but the opening is what's kind of interesting to me. 20-25 rated player. He plays pretty solidly, it seems like, a lot of the time. But what did he even play here? Oh, yeah. He tries to go for the Scotch. But his opponent didn't go for it here. Here he took full control of the center. And he plays knight d2, not knight c3. I wonder if that matters. For the Pierts. Let's see. Right? Because that could be something that happens. We play with the Pierts. Something like this. This. And knight d2. Knight d2 protects, but it stops the bishop from coming out. Computer likes an immediate e5 here, which looks crazy to me. If takes, I guess the idea is the queens don't trade right now. And if he moves the knight away, obviously I get this, which is just a very beautiful position. Because I'm threatening this, his king can't castle, and I'm up a pawn. So that makes sense, actually, to go e5 right away. And if he tries to close off the position, maybe I try to hit back with c6, trying to break this open. If he takes, it allows me to get a very strong center, I think. Taking with the knight looks okay. It develops a piece, obviously, but taking with the pawn supports the d pawn. So yeah, that's correct. So this is a line that maybe we get into in our game. But let's just keep looking here. Okay. My man just blundered a queen. Right? He blundered his queen. That's kind of weird, but okay. Don't really know what to say about that. Sometimes we blunder. Let's see. This was analysis. Okay, this was actually the tournament game. Blitz game. So he went into the Scotch. Oh, and she took. Taking is slightly worse, I believe, because the queen comes in and there's no knight to attack the queen. I guess people are not experienced against the Scotch. You can see white has an advantage here because of that. Let's see what happens, though. Queen comes, pawn pushes. Queen comes to trade. Okay. And black kind of solved some issues. Right away, what do I see here? I mean, computer obviously says this is winning. We have a bishop pair. We have more activity as white. But what is the kind of kill shot here? Is it bishop here? Is it bishop here? Is it castling? Is it some knight move? Maybe this knight move attacking this pawn. That would kind of make sense because the bishop can't come here to protect the pawn, right? Something like this. Okay, yeah, computer kind of agrees with me. If this, now he can't castle, we could probably castle. We could probably go h4, h5 and try to push here. Okay, cool. Doesn't do that though. We have all of this. Ooh, completely winning in this position. Is it because we just take and push? That must be it, right? Yeah. Yeah. And now I would take this pawn. Yeah. Yeah, so this is completely winning. I'm guessing he won this game. Yeah, I mean, this is a complete... Yeah, this is completely won. Very nice. Very nicely done. Let's look over here. We have... This king's pawn move is so weird to me. The French defense prepares for d5. The computer says, but blocks in the light-squared bishop in exchange for a strong center and counter-attacking chances. Blocks in the light-squared bishop. So this bishop is going to be blocked in, I suppose. d5 is a counter-attack that threatens the e4 pawn, right? Because this pawn kind of didn't take the full center. So if I'm playing as white here, and my opponent does this, I would take the full center. Yeah, this is the French defense. I like to play the Tarrasch variation, where the knight comes here, okay? It's harder for me to recognize the French from Black's point of view because I never play it. I just play like against it with white. So I always like to play this. I should probably look at some lines. If takes, I probably take, right? I mean, that makes sense. If he tries to counterattack in the middle, I think that's popular. I could take... He could take, and computer likes check. If bishop blocks, then pawn takes. Because if this takes, we have check, and I guess our pieces are getting into the game. Wow, we could even promote here. Wow, we could just win a piece and promote. So it kind of forces him to take here. Queen comes in here, and we win back the bishop. Okay. That's pretty crazy. That's already pretty crazy, actually. I never thought of that. So takes, if takes, we have takes. And, oops. Wait, is that right? If we take here... Yeah, now computer says gf3. Developing this knight is better. But I think taking here is cooler. So we're going to do that. Now, if he takes here, we probably could take. But again, knight gf3 is preferred. I guess this just helps develop a piece, so it's better to come here. That makes sense. If we do something like this, we have this bishop move, we're ready to castle. Kind of interesting to me that this shows as like already that it's kind of winning. I guess Black has a hard time bringing his king to safety, is the idea here. And I mean, this is just totally losing. Right, the queen is kind of hooping all over the place. Anyway, here we have c4. Really? I would think takes and do something. I mean, taking apparently is fine too. And then d5. Wow. Because if he takes, we always take, right? d5. Very, very interesting stuff. The knight is pinned. Yeah. Wow. Very cool. Very cool tricks here. I don't know if this is like normal at all, but it's very interesting. Nevertheless, anyway, this taking in the center could be good. Ex d5. Now, if my opponent takes here, again we have this check. He can't block. He loses his knight. If here we have takes, if takes we have check. Takes, check wins the queen back. g6 will probably take b5. And this is winning because we are up a pawn. And, I mean, our king is much safer, obviously. If something like this, knight e2, this doesn't work because of the queen. So maybe something like here, I would just check. I think is the easiest thing. Computer likes queen c4. There's probably some difference, but, I mean, I'm still targeting this pawn. And, okay, let's look at what happened in the game instead. So let's go back. Okay, so my opponent, or Houseline, does go for this c5 move. He does, but our friend here went e5, which is not the move I would play. Because, like I said, I like the knight move. There's a lot of pressure here right away, kind of similar to the Caro Kann in my head. And this is a completely even game until this move. This move blunders something. I'm going to guess it's some sort of sacrifice, but computer disagrees. Oh, I could take here, right? Takes, and now I'm just up a pawn. Although this looks very scary. So here, there must be some other move that works. Computer likes, queen takes d4, takes. If he attacks, we have this winning the rook. So that doesn't make sense. Okay, very cool. And he blundered the pawn. Oh, our opponent blundered it anyway. And what we just looked at ends up happening. Isn't this a move? How is it that I see that and my opponent doesn't? Like, this is clearly a fork. This is just like this is just wins the game, but okay. This game was just insane. I don't know. My opponent was off his rocker. Or why I keep saying my opponent? They were both kind of a little bit not playing their best. So what do we have here? We have the Scotch. And against the Sicilian, he plays c3, which I think is very solid. But we don't really play the Sicilian. So looking at this, I don't think is too useful. So I'm going to exit. Could be, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. He had 90% accuracy in this game. Okay. So we have the French. Again, I don't really play this bishop move. But it looks like he's pretty well versed in the French. I want to see a Tarrasch variation of the French. I want to see if he plays any of those. So what we're going to do is we're going to look specifically on that. But first, let's look at the game against Coda, who we lost to yesterday. He brought his bishop back. And she says that she just makes her own openings. She doesn't really think through and play like these opening type of moves, which I think is very strong against weaker players. No offense, but everyone in this tournament is kind of a weaker player, probably, including me. I'm like one of the weakest, if not the weakest. And we probably don't understand certain pawn structures and stuff too much. So yeah, this is completely lost game, and there's not much to really talk about there. In this rapid game, we have... Whoa! He doesn't take a free pawn. Was it because he was scared of this? I mean, then we have this push, probably. Although it does weaken our pawn. So computer says after this queen move, d4... the thing I would just worry about is what if my knight gets attacked? But then there's this bishop move. And there's actually stuff that's really nice here to deal with. For example, if here takes, and you don't even need to take here. You could probably just castle. This doesn't work because of this. And you just lose the game. So, kind of interesting. I kind of already knew that pattern, but it's good to review. Wow. And he's just completely obliterating Coda here. Wow, this is pretty crazy. I think Coda loses a game, wins a game, and then wins an Armageddon. Like, this is her style. I don't know, because that's what happened between our game too. Maybe she just plays around. Okay, we want to see French games. So we're gonna look at French defense. I'm gonna go here. Rapid games are great against a 21-25 rated player. I want to see a Tarrasch variation, like I said before. Is there a way to see Tarrasch variation? Oh, we could actually see like some cool stuff, I guess. Can we go into the French? Let me know if this is interesting, by the way, guys. I don't know if it's interesting. Can we go into French Tarrasch variation? I guess not. Yeah. Anyway, we'll just look at some games then, and hopefully it's the Tarrasch. No. No one's playing the Tarrasch. Okay, this is an exchange variation, probably, because you exchange pawns. So, nothing to really say about this one. Wow, pinned the queen to the king. Okay. So we have those two wins. Yeah, let's see. French. Search. Wait, this is playing the French as white. Playing the French as white. That doesn't make sense. I want to see it as black. He plays it as black a lot. So we're going to go French, black. I don't know where it went, but it's back here. Okay. This game, this game, this game. Even though I looked at some of these, I'm too tired and stupid right now to know what I looked at. I'm just really curious to see what happened. Okay, and he plays against a cheater here. Wow. Count banned. How many more should I go through? December 2nd should be fine, right? Okay. Wow, 97.7% accuracy. And he plays the advanced. He advances the pawn. Let's see our next guy here. This is the exchange. Those were the two we saw already, I believe. Ooh. Not the Tarrasch. Tarrasch is knight d2. But still interesting. And both sides know what they're doing for the first few moves. Still not what I play. Wow. C4. C4 looks crazy. C4 looks very interesting. Actually, I might study that. What do we do here? He advanced. He advanced. I guess the Tarrasch is not that popular. Maybe it's something to study more. If we have him kind of not having experience in it, I think that's great. Yeah, none of this is the Tarrasch. Wow. Kind of a weird game. Okay, no one is playing knight d2. I will say maybe he gets into I was gonna say maybe his opponents get into better positions when they play knight c3. But yeah, this might be a good sign that they don't have experience with what I always play. Oh, yeah. Like no one is playing knight d2. No one. Look at this. No. Oh, there we go. Tarrasch. Tarrasch variation. Okay. I would advance my pawn to e5. Yeah. Then knight goes to d7 or knight just goes back. Okay, knight goes to d7. What would I play here? I think I would consider c4 because it looks crazy. Okay, he plays bishop move. What if you play c4? So here it says that it controls the e4 square and does some other stuff. I'm curious. Let's study this a little bit. Okay. What if I play c4? I give away my advantage because of c5. Takes. Or no, takes. And knight comes here probably. Yeah, this... Okay, apparently this is losing a little bit. But it looks interesting to me. And then the other thing I would consider here is in like c3. I think I would play normally. I'll play c3 and then b3 at a certain point. Now computer says the best move here is f4. Just get ready to attack like a maniac. So I gotta study this more. This looks very promising. You know, this guy here that goes up against house line though plays bishop d3, and then protects this pawn. Now I think c4 is the move here, and you just go bishop c2. I wonder if this... Okay, this just gives some big advantage, but you would go bishop c2. Knight here, knight here. Now, what if knight comes to f3? Is this not better? Because you control some more squares here and here in particularly. Computer says 0.3. Yeah, computer says this is slightly better, but okay. Takes. And here, I think I would play f4. You know, f4 looks like a crazy move. Oops, f4. Okay, that loses the advantage. Why? Why does f4 lose the advantage? Aren't you just supporting this pawn? Or are you creating this diagonal too weak? Something like takes is the idea that the queen comes in with a check. Computer says knight takes d4. Oh, and after you take here, the queen comes here, probably picking up the knight. right? Probably like this. And now you're threatening this. It doesn't... I mean, maybe knight comes here. It doesn't look pleasant though, right? That's why probably f4 is better over here. Because here there's no attack. We just kick the queen away. So, interesting. f4 is always a scary move to play, right? Because it weakens the diagonal that can be attacked against our king. But anyway, our opponent played like this. These are all books moves. Jesus Christ. And here, knight f3 was the move. Knight f3, probably to add more support here, to open up the bishop, and to have eyes on e5, not allowing this advancement, right? That makes sense as a move. Okay, plays knight here. And my man is playing like pretty amazingly. Pretty amazingly. This probably blunders something like this. Maybe knight comes here. I don't know. I'm not a genius. Computer says this is a maiden too. Wow. Check here. Rook takes. Pawn takes. And I'm guessing queen comes in or something. I don't know, actually. Wait. Check here. Check takes. And there's no way this is a mate. Yeah, knight takes. So where's the mate here? Queen takes... Oh, queen takes h3. Wow. That's like... Imagine losing a game like this. That's hard to see, though. That's hard to see. Pawn moves are always scary, though. So as black, you would have to see check here, check here, and then check. Yeah, I think that's pretty hard to see. Now, what if he moved here? And this is a maiden one because of this. Wow. Crazy position. Anyway. The game goes like this. Wow. Brilliant sacrifice for this pin, I guess. Queen can't come here to protect. You could probably go d2, but then there's pressure like this. Yeah. Now the game is even. Now this was losing because of e8. Yeah, I felt like e8 is so necessary at some point here. And here he resigns. He resigns because this is pinned. Gonna win this with check, take. And now you're just down. You're just down a piece. And it's a bishop. So not that great. Okay. Let's see this game. This one's different. And let's see this one. And it's the advance. Okay. So, I mean, the one game we see, maybe we'll look for more next time, but the one game we see a knight d7, which I think is not the best move here. Yeah, computer likes... Oh no, computer likes it. I don't know, it just seems weird. And f4 is the move here. So I think I'm going to start studying a little bit of this. Actually, let me show you guys what I would do, I guess. I'll come here. Now let's search up knight nuggets. No. Now let's search up garage. Oh, look, I searched it up before. Variation on the French defense. And then what would I have here?
Now knight to b3 will be played.
Oh, yeah, this guy's great. Hanging pawns. So this is actually pretty helpful stuff. Probably should watch it. I was trying to learn before over here based off these types of videos. I think I wanted to understand how it works. I mean, he's showing it from black's point of view, which makes sense. I don't know why I said that, like it doesn't make sense. But watching this would probably be helpful. I don't know. Let's watch. Let's watch together. We're doing something a little different today. Like I'm studying with you guys.
Stepan here. I'll continue covering the French defense with what I think is one of the most fighting ways for white to answer pawn to e6 on move 1 by black. And the Tarrasch starts after e4, e6, d4, d5, the French defense. And now white plays knight to d2. And this is the Tarrasch variation of the French. Now, first of all, I would like to say that if you like the knowledge and the basics of the French defense and the basic ideas, opening plans and variations for both sides, I have made a video on the basics, so I will link it in the description.
I think I saw the video of the basics a while ago.
Looking for something simpler to play with white. Now, why knight to d2? The most common move in French is the classical variation of or the Paulsen variation. When this knight doesn't go to d2, it goes to c3. And the problem of knight to c3 is that black can at some point pin the knight, and after that white will be forced
Yeah,
to
it gets
double his
very
pawns on the c
annoying.
file in order to be able to defend the d4 pawn. And the main downside for white in the French defense is that he has to defend d4. The main downside for black is that he has to find a pawn break. It will usually be c5 or f6, and that he has to resolve the issue of this dark squared bishop. And now the move knight to d2 is preparing to simply defend the d4 pawn with the pawn with pawn to c3 without having to double his pawns and without having to deal with this spin. And of course, if bishop to b5 to b4 now, I'm sorry, then simply c3 would be a gain of tempo for white. So knight to d2 is a very logical move, and this variation wasn't that familiar in chess and wasn't that popular until Anatoly Karpov started playing it with great
I didn't know that. Anatoly Karpov played it. That's pretty cool. One of the world champions, right?
success in the 70s and in the 80s, and since then it has become the second most common line, and perhaps it might even surpass the classical variation.
The second most common line, and maybe it has surpassed it, right? This is 6 years ago. That's pretty interesting, seeing as how I think, all of these opponents we saw haven't been using this variation.
Knight to c3. This is my personal favorite, but I'm subjective. So now to this variation, the good thing for black is that he gets to choose the continuation, and there are, I would say, 3 main moves and 3 slightly dubious sidelines for black, and we will go through all of them. Firstly, let's go through the sidelines. I will get to the main line at the end of the video. The main line is knight to f6, and that's the most active move, but we will get to that later.
Yeah. So here pawn takes, pawn
pushes
pushes.
to c5, and this is the so-called open system of the Tarrasch French. And with this move, black is simply saying to white that he's going to break through the center and open up his dark square bishop, get his pawn break immediately, and try to exploit the fact that the knight isn't on c3 and that the knight isn't defending the d5.
Well, I would go c3 as well, right?
That the move c5 is possible. However, this is by no means worst for white. Now white will have to continue with d takes d5. This is the only move. And now black has 2 options. He can either capture
This is the only move? Well, I'm not good enough to understand why that's the only move, or I have to see it on a board, me personally. So let's do that. Here, how's the French like this, right? Like this. Knight comes here. And he's saying c5. Oh, we looked at this. Now, after c5, we saw that taking here is good. Now, why is this not good? Why does this neutralize anything, any kind of objective? Because he has a pawn break, and I guess that's the reason. I think that is the reason. I think the other idea here is that if we take back, we have an isolated pawn. This is going to be very hard to defend, right? We have no other pawns protecting it. And I think this is the problem. You might think, okay, why not take with the queen? Well, it's the same idea, right? Queens can trade, and this becomes a target, an easier target for our opponent to take. And this knight isn't really threatening anything. I mean, this is all covered by the bishop. This is covered by the pawn, by the knight. So all of those types of moves don't really make sense. Our knight here is kind of looking a little dumb. So c5 doesn't make sense because after takes, we just have an isolated pawn. So this is good to kind of visualize, I think, for me in my head at least, to understand the ideas. Now, computer says gf3. It looks kind of crazy to me, but I guess it works. And this is probably drawn position, no? No, this is a little winning because we have 2 knights in the middle. And even though they can't do anything, I mean, I don't see what they could do. This looks like it... Oh, I guess it does threaten this. And if this pushes forward, we have here, takes, maybe here. And this wins the rook, right? So you got to be a little careful, I guess. So after this move, taking in the middle is the best. If pawn takes, we can take probably. Computer likes... Oh, yeah. This is the line we looked at earlier today. This, because if this, we have this, giving up the bishop temporarily to win it back later, and this is an isolated pawn. It's not only an isolated pawn, we're up a pawn. So we're up a pawn, and we have this target that's probably pretty easy to take out. The thing is, he has some pieces to move around, some targets, let's say, to kind of go for. But we have kind of we're up material. We have some move like this. And this kind of looks a little scary because the bishop eyes this, but it's protected. And here computer likes knight f4, probably because this is a fork. And something after this, we have, maybe we could even go for this check, which is kind of funny. But computer says no, because then our knight is stuck and he could trade it off. So knight e4 stops this attack. There are no pawns to attack. There is no light squared bishop to attack. So we're just kind of Bing chilling here. Now in this position, now we could go for knight e6 because this doesn't threaten anything. And we have a discovered attack. We even have a mate in 6 apparently. After something like this and this, this becomes a checkmate. So I think we're getting too deep in that, but that's kind of the idea here, right? Take, bishop check, bishop block, pawn take, bishop takes, pawn check. And this doesn't work because you can take and make a queen. And that's obviously bad to make a queen. Maybe queen comes out here, but computer likes just developing this knight, attacking the pawn. I wonder if queen coming out here is okay. Yeah, this is still winning, but it loses it loses the objective a lot. I think knight coming here is normal move. But this wins the queen, so you have to be careful. Okay. Let's get back to the video. We kind of understand a little bit more of this.
With the queen or with the pawn. I think capturing with the queen is far more active, but taking this is the only move is possible. However, this is by no means worst for white. Now white will have to continue with d takes d5. This is the only move. And now black has two options. He can either capture with the queen or with the pawn. I think capturing with the queen is far more active, but taking with the pawn is good as well. Firstly, if you capture with the pawn, e takes d5. Then white will continue with knight g to f3, and you can already see that black will most probably end up with an isolated queen pawn, which of course can be both a strength and a weakness, but in any endgame, black is going to be structurally worse because of that.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. That's a very, very good point. The idea being here that if you take here and the pawn takes, then this is going to be an isolated pawn, right? This is going to be an annoying piece to deal with. And that's kind of the idea. Like if takes, we could take, but bishop d3 stops the pawn in its tracks. And these two pawns are definite targets. There are no other pawns to protect them. They're going to be kind of taken out. Maybe. And you could see this goes straight into an end game, and probably could take right here, but castling's probably fine. Anyway, let's go back.
And white already has two blockaders which could come to the square d4 and blockade the pawn. And as Nimzovich would say, passed pawns and especially isolated pawns should be blockaded. So now after...
Isolated pawns should be blockaded. Now you put a piece in front of it so it can't move forward because it could cause problems when there are, when they could, especially passed pawns when they could push.
After knight
Makes
g to
sense,
f3,
I
you will
guess.
continue with knight to c6.
And you can make it a target if it can't move.
6, bishop to b5 pinning the knight, bishop to d6.
Wait, so let's go back.
After knight g to f3, pass worse because of this pawn, which of course will continue with not taking with the pawn is good as well. Firstly, if you capture with the pawn, e takes d5. Then white will continue with knight g to f3, and you can already see that black will most probably end up with an isolated queen pawn, which of course can be both a strength and a weakness, but in any endgame, black is going to be structurally worse because of that. And white already has two blockaders which could come to the square d4 and blockade the pawn. And as Nimzovich would say, passed pawns and especially isolated pawns should be blockaded. So now after knight g to f3, you will continue with knight to c6, bishop to b5 pinning the knight, bishop to d6, and of course...
He goes so fast. I mean, I have it sped up a little, but still.
Now after knight g to f3, you will continue with knight to c6, bishop to b5 pinning the knight, bishop to d6, and of course you have to develop your bishop at some point because you have to castle, and white will always wait for you to develop the bishop, whether it be to e7 or...
Yeah, so this makes sense in terms of tempo. Those wondering, I'll explain it now. But let's go back to the position. So we have coming here, pawn comes forward, take more control of the center. We go into the Tarrasch. Our opponent might just do this. I mean, this is kind of what I would expect, but we know kind of to go f4, and we can analyze that further. But if they come here, then we can take. And them taking here is not good because we have the bishop trick. I'm just going over it again to kind of fortify it in my brain. So they can take with the pawn. Now, taking with the queen is a little worse, apparently. Knight can come here. If pawn takes again, bishop c4. Queen can come all the way back, and we castle. And apparently this is pretty even. I mean, we're down a pawn, but this pawn is probably overextended a little too far. Something like this just wins the pawn. Wow. And we put immediate pressure here. Also opens up our rook. That actually loses the game. That's kind of wild how one move can do something like that. But anyway, our opponent says to, or, you know, the guy says, hanging pawn guy says to take with the pawn. develop, develop, bishop develops. Now if pawn pushes here, which I would consider, why not just take? I guess the idea is that this is very weak, and these are split pawns, easier targets in the endgame. That would be my guess for why pushing this is not great. You're kind of forcing this trade. But yeah, let's say instead he does this move. At this point you take, forcing him to take. And here you probably could just castle. Okay. Let's see what he was saying.
To d6, and only then take the castle, knight to c6, bishop to b5 pinning the knight, bishop to d6, and of course you have to develop your bishop at some point because you have...
Oh yeah, and this gains tempo. It forces your opponent to react to your move, maybe putting their piece where they don't want them. Usually you don't want to move a piece more than once in the opening, so forcing the bishop to move twice here is good for white. And yeah, I think this is why we wait as white to capture after the bishop moves. And if the pawn moves, it allows our knight to get into the position or, you know, do other stuff. So.
And white will always wait for you to develop the bishop, whether it be to e7 or to d6, and only then capture on c5 in order to be able to gain a tempo. And now after dc5, bishop c5, you can see that white has virtually provoked you to move your bishop twice in order to be able to castle. But once again, this is only slightly better for white. Now white will castle, knight to e7 is better than to develop to f6 because you are anticipating the move rook to e1. Now knight to b3 will be played by white, bishop to d6 getting away from the glare of the knight. Of course, you don't want to give away your bishop pair. And after rook e1 castles, this is sort of the starting position of the open system of the Tarrasch if black should capture with the pawn. And there's pretty much no good way for black to avoid having an isolated queen's pawn, and there's also no good way for him to avoid white having a slight advantage. So I wouldn't...
Nice! So that's good to hear for us, because we don't play the French, or I don't play the French. So there's no good way to avoid the isolated pawn. So again, we have the Tarrasch. I love playing the Tarrasch because it's just super cool. I don't know, it's different. I usually play the knight to b3, but I guess we wait for the bishop here to play it with a tempo, forcing the bishop to move away. So after this, again we have this. If this, the bishop comes in with all that fun stuff. If pawn takes, which is, I guess, the correct move, knight comes here. Knight develops, bishop comes here. Bishop develops, then we take. Knight comes here, or bishop comes there. We castle, getting ready to attack the king. Knight comes here, because if knight came here, we have this immediate kind of attack. Computer likes queen e2, probably to double up here. Something like bishop here, knight b3, putting pressure. Oh, that's not knight b3, this is knight b3. So I guess the same kind of idea applies. Very difficult. Again, I don't understand all of it. But I understand why knight e7 is the move, right? It stops the check. I think we could still go for this idea, right? But this actually, this is losing after sacrificing the... What? Are you... What? Oh my god. This? Wow. And you win the bishop. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. So the rook is necessary here to block. We have to get the bishop away. Now, what if the bishop comes back? Now, if we go rook e1, takes, then we take with the king. Queen comes here. And now we have this knight move defending. Computer also likes queen d4, because if takes, I'm guessing we can just take here and wreak havoc. It looks like the rook is safe, but bishop here, threatening some scary stuff. And if rook comes here, because the knight protects it, then we could probably take here. But what's a better move? What's a better move? Oh, we just sack... No, we can't sack the rook because the other knight takes. What is the move here? Trying to look at it without looking at the computer. Oh, we could just take. It's pinned. The rook pins the knight to the queen, right? So this is actually... this is just completely winning. And now we could probably take here and continue. We could even take here. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's very cool. That's not pretty cool. That's very cool. The difference being such an interesting thing. Like, the difference being that the queen can come here. Like, whereas if we didn't push it back with the knight, now the queen doesn't have this open space. now our queen can't come in, right? We can't block. Because it looks like we're protecting it, but I don't know. He could just take it, actually. So, it's freaking fascinating stuff. So, that's why after takes, the knight comes to defend, knight comes here, bishop comes here. We saw why you don't push. It creates a bad pawn structure, I believe. And then after this, we see how... we see this to stop the rook from coming in, okay? And we see this to attack, and not to do kind of this rook move right away, because then we lose to this idea. Very cool stuff. So after the knight comes here, if the bishop comes back... I just pressed a bunch of stuff. The knight comes here. Bishop goes back. I think this is closer to what he's talking about. And he says this is just worse for black.
We open system of knight, of course, making the move rook to e1. Now knight to b3 will be played by white. Bishop to d6, getting away from the glare of the knight. Of course, you don't want to give away your bishop pair. And after rook e1 castles, this is sort of the starting position of the open system.
Okay. Then he's saying here, here, castles. And this is going to be annoying to deal with as black, I guess. So, you know, I would say interesting. Just after this move, which looks annoying, how can we kind of deal with stuff? Computer says bishop e3. Just try to go for the trade right away. He takes, we take. This doesn't work because takes. Probably take with the queen. Here. Here. If takes, we get a mate. So, yeah.
System of the Tarrasch if black should capture with the pawn, and there's pretty much no good way for black to avoid having an isolated queen's pawn, and there's also no good way for him to avoid white having a slight advantage. So I wouldn't advise to capture with the pawn after c5, e takes d5. Much better is to take with the queen. Now after queen takes, the queen...
Okay. So going all the way back here, going all the way... It's funny because I thought, isn't taking with the queen nice? But then I was back and I didn't really understand if it was better or not. So this is bad because it leaves this pawn being isolated. Bless me. And if after this he takes, then we have bishop here, queen here, and castles. This protects this. So if this, we have this, and if this, we take the pawn. If this, probably trade. And probably take, and this is going to become a target, right? So, kind of interesting. If we go back here, anyway, queen takes is the better move, supposedly. I think knight f3 is still fine, probably. I wonder if queen here is good, but then we don't protect this pawn. So, I think knight g3 is better. And let's see what he says.
You could argue is too exposed on d5 and it might have moved too early, but you have solidified your king. You haven't opened up the e-file for white's rook, which will definitely happen, and you have another option of capturing c5. So now the game would continue with knight g to f3. C takes d4 is the best move for black. Of course, now white can't recapture because the pawn is defended. So now bishop to c4 is played. The only move is queen to d6, not going all the way back to d8. White castles, knight to f6, and knight to b3 would be played by white. Now putting immense pressure on...
So this is kind of the idea. I love going knight b3 here to put pressure here and here. So I'm happy because that's something I kind of recognize. So anyway, queen comes here, knight comes here, pawn takes here, bishop comes here. And he said queen all the way back is not correct. Now, my small brain says it's 0.3, it's a book move. I can't tell you why this is not correct, but okay, queen comes here. I feel like you're blocking in your bishop. I don't know, chess. And the idea here is that we have this knight move coming in, attacking, putting a lot of pressure here. A computer likes knight e4 attacking. I mean, that makes sense too. So I don't know why you would move the queen there, but...
The d4 pawn, which is inevitably dropping. There's no way for black to keep the pawn, but you can see the difference between this position and the last one. The pawn isn't isolated on d5, it's on e6, which is where it's far more useful because it's covering the king. And of course, it's not a structural weakness, an isolated pawn. Now from this position on, black has to continue with knight to c6, give up the pawn, and after knight b takes d4, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, a6, you have to prevent the idea of the knight or the bishop coming to the b5 square. And now after this move, rook to e1, bishop to e7, you're going to castle. The position is pretty much equal.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. Bro, this whole thing is interesting. So, we have queen takes, knight develops. I think pawn takes. We have bishop attacks, queen back, knight comes here attacking the pawn. Now this neutralizes the position. Okay, castling is apparently better. Maybe it's better because this comes with a check. And now the knight just goes back. Yeah. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe maybe that's why queen here is better as opposed to here. I don't know. Anyway, queen here, castles. Knight develops something like this. Knight attacks this. Knight comes here, takes, and then stop this threat. Now, if he doesn't stop it and does some other move, well, this kind of stops the threat too. I don't know, moves the bishop to try to castle. It's still fine. There's nothing really going on. So.
Black has great fighting chances, especially with the move b5, bishop to b7, fianchettoing the bishop on the queen side and putting it on the long diagonal. And there's already some ideas as rook to d8, knight to d5, and getting a great outpost for your knight. Of course, white will have c4, but the position is balanced and both sides have something to play for. So this is what happens after the open system. Let me just come back to this position after knight f6, knight to b3. Remember that you can't play e5. If you try to defend your pawn, even though it might seem plausible, the position is just busted for black, and white has too much counterplay. Your king is stuck in the center, so trying to defend your extra pawn would be very unwise in this position. Firstly, rook to e1. Now you play knight to c6, trying to defend. Bishop f4, of course, the pawn is pinned, so it can't take. So this is pressurizing the e5 pawn even more. Knight to d7, passively defending.
Wow,
now knight to g5, attacking the f7 square twice.
Wow.
Knight to d8. And if you look at black's pieces, now it's already visible that black is lost. He is struggling to defend with all of his forces.
Wow.
Now, of course, black can lose a pawn immediately, give back the pawn immediately. If white should at any point decides to take on d4, for example, with knight takes d4, of course, the queen can't take because queen takes and the pawn is pinned. So white is definitely winning in this position. So remember that after knight to b3, just give up the pawn, play knight to c6, and continue to be normal.
That's actually pretty cool. So just give up the pawn. If they try to hold on to the pawn here, by pushing here, this gives an advantage to us. Of course, after this. Castles. And, I don't know, knight here, pawn pushes. And this is bad, he said, because rook can pin the pawn. But before that, knight g5. Yeah, I thought knight g5 just puts in... Okay. But rook pins the pawn. Pushing doesn't make sense. I'm not going to pretend like I understood everything that just happened. But here, and we just gain it back, right? I don't know. This was already different. I'm a little tired, but okay. This is interesting.
So this is c5. After.
Okay, and we could see maybe the rest of this tomorrow. You can let me know what you think about this. And yeah, this was pretty interesting. Maybe we'll look at this tomorrow. I don't know yet. I think studying our opponent is important for the tournament. And you know, maybe we get a lot of Elo also because House Line is like, I thought he was higher rated in Rapid. Yeah, he's a 1900 rated player, so he could, you know, he could give us a lot of points because we lost a lot of Elo. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. This was a very long video, but I hope it was enjoyable. I hope you learned something. And if you watched this far, you really, really, really are a real one. I really appreciate it. I wish I could give you a prize or something. So just say prize in the comments. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.